How you doing, everybody? Greetings and welcome to this episode of 8 Bits in the Basement. So you may remember a little while ago I made a video taking a look at the Alice, which is, well, the version I have is a 4K. It's the most basic version, and the Alice is a French clone of the MC-10 from Tandy and Radio Shack. It was made here in France by Matra and marketed by Hachette, and to be quite honest, there's not a whole lot you can do with it. It has 4K memory, the games for it are very, very limited, and when it comes to programming, apart from learning to program on it, there's not a whole lot you can do. So there are numerous expansions available for it. There's a couple of memory expansions. There's also an 8 KB memory expansion you can put on the inside of the unit. But I decided what I would do was try and get a memory expansion for it to see what we could do, if we could lift it up and maybe play a few different games or see what it was really capable of. And in looking around on the internet, I found that Darren Atkinson, who has created all kinds of hardware for the Coco line of computers, he's after doing the Coco SDC and many other devices. He had, back in 2015, made a memory expansion called the MCX128, and what it did was it gave the Alice 128 kilobytes of RAM, and also it had a new version of Basic on it, MCX Basic, which included all kinds of new commands. So that you could use the Alice a little more easily. You could connect it to PyDriveWire in a way, and you could load up games and stuff onto it or programs onto it lightning fast instead of using the cassette and all that kind of stuff. But it also lets you use all the software that needs more memory, like the Alice stuff that was designed for 32 kilobyte systems and all that. So it's a very, very good little thing. So I had a look anyway, and I saw that Ed Snyder sells these on his website, the Zipster Zone, but they're not always in stock. So I had a look around to see if there was anything else I could find, and on the Color Computer Archive I found that Darren Atkinson had made available all the files needed so that you could pretty much build your own. There was the schematics, there were all the bin files and all you needed to program chips, and there was also Gerbers available so that you could get the PCBs made. But I decided I'd kind of do it the hard way. I figured back in the 80s, if you were going to do something like this, it wasn't easy to get Gerbers made. You couldn't send off to China and for very little money get 5 PCBs back you know, a week or two later. That just wasn't an option. So I figured I'd do it like I would have done it had I been doing it back 40 odd years ago. And I decided to go old school on it, point to point on perf board. So that's what I did. And the culmination of 11 hours of sitting over a soldering iron got me this. This here is the finished product. So what we'll do is we'll take a little look at it and just see what it's made up of, and we'll take off the elastic bands and the cardboard, and I'll explain to you what exactly it is. Okay, so I'm after taking this guy's cardboard and elastic bands off, and I'd like to introduce you to the naked version of my hand-built, cobbled together MCX128 memory expansion for the Alice or the MC-10. Now this guy consists of 4 chips and a connector here, and the connector plugs into the back of your Alice or MC-10's expansion port here, and all you need to do is power it on and it should work. And what makes it work are these 4 chips here, and just very quickly what they are, this guy here is a 74LS21. So this is a dual quad input AND gate. Down here we have a PLD, or a programmable logic device, and this here is a GAL 22V10. This guy is 128 kilobytes of static RAM. This guy that gives us our memory on board, or our upgrade. And down here we have a ROM chip which holds the version of MCX Basic that this board gives you. And you can use 3 different types of ROMs. You can use a 16 kilobyte, a 32, or a 64 kilobyte. Now I've opted to go for the 32 kilobyte, and the reason for that is that the ROM on this board is only 16K big, but I've decided to install the 2 versions that are available, because there is a version for the MC-10 as it has a QWERTY keyboard, and there's also another version for the Alice with its AZERTY keyboard. So I've installed both versions on this ROM, and I can switch between them using these jumpers down here. So that way this board that I've built is compatible, with both versions of computer. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, I will say that I had a lot of fun building this little board, and I learned a lot from it, and it was great and all the rest. But if it fell on the ground and broke in two, I wouldn't be going to build it again. No, I'd be clicking on the Zipster zone, and I'd be looking to buy one of these from Ed Snyder, because to be honest with you, what he has looks to be a very high quality. It comes in a lovely 3D printed case, which kind of beats this hands down, and it'll work out of the box. Plus, it will save you 11 hours, and they're cheap enough. They only cost $40. And away we'll go and see what this guy can do, eh? So just before we get into looking at that expansion card and what it can do, I thought it'd be a nice idea to look at the Alice once more and just remember what it's like without any expansion card in it whatsoever. So when we power it up, we've got this Microcolor Basic version 1, copyright 1982 from Microsoft. And from here we could see load a program from cassette, we could write in a little program, and we could see save it to cassette if we wanted to, but all the while we are limited by the amount of memory that's available to us once it's powered on. So here you see all we have is 3 kilobytes of RAM. So any programs that we load or any that we save are going to be very, very basic and very, very restricted. And that is the reason why you really need one of these little memory cards. So this guy plugs into the expansion port on the back of the Alice, and when you power it on, it gives you this little boot menu here. So we've got 3 options. We've got our Microcolor Basic, we've got our MCX Basic, and then we've got our MCX Basic Large. So we'll start by selecting Microcolor Basic, option 0. The screen goes black for a second, and the reason it goes black is it's actually testing the memory on this expansion card to make sure that it's okay and it's working properly, and also it's copying the ROM into that memory so that it's available to the Alice. But you'll see here that we have exactly the same screen as we had before. Our Microcolor Basic version 1, copyright 1982 from Microsoft. The difference here though is that if I do a print mem, you'll see that we have 32 kilobytes of memory available to us. So this really is the configuration you would be using if you wanted to load a program for the Alice or the MC-10 from cassette, but it were a program that needed 8 kilobytes, 16 kilobytes, or 32 kilobytes of RAM. So that's probably the configuration you'd be using most of the time. Now, if I press break and reset, it brings us back into this boot menu here. So we will select option 1, which is MCX Basic. So here we have MCX Basic version 2.1, and this particular build is for the AZERTY keyboard, which is what the Alice has, an AZERTY keyboard layout. There's a QWERTY version available for the MC-10, the American version. Now, MCX Basic has a load of new commands and new statements on top of what Microcolor Basic has. So it's a compatible version, but it's a more powerful version. And also you'll notice here that if I do a print mem, we have 28 kilobytes of RAM here available. And actually, it's not just 28 kilobytes that's available, because there are also 5 pages of graphics memory available, and each page is 3 kilobytes big. So what we have, in fact, is 28 plus 15K of memory available to us, giving us pretty much 43 kilobytes of memory in this configuration here. Now, this is a configuration you would use if you were using pyDriveWire with this system, which is a way to quickly load programs across a serial cable using a host PC, very much like DriveWire is for the Coco 2. The other version of MCX Basic that's available to us is the large configuration. And it's exactly the same as the version we were looking at earlier, but the difference here is that we have much more memory available to us. Here we have 47 kilobytes, but we've also got 8 pages of graphics memory, each of 3 kilobytes big each. So we've got our 47 plus 24K. So we have more or less 70 kilobytes of memory available to us in this configuration. So I thought what would be nice to do is we will load up some of the games that you can play on this system now with this memory expansion, and we'll take a look at what they're like. Okay, so I'm after booting into Microcolor Basic version 1 with my memory card giving me 32 kilobytes of RAM. So what I'm going to do is I am going to press Control and 4 for C load, and I'm going to add an M because it's a machine language program that I wish to load up. When I press enter, I get a little S here, which means that it's searching, and I'll just start PacMan, the audio file, playing on my mobile phone here. So it's after finding PacMan, and little flashing cursor here indicates that it's loading up just fine. So it's after loading up, so it's a machine language program, so I type EXEC to get it to start. So here we are. PacMan has loaded up. There is no way you could load this game up on an Alice with its 4 kilobytes of stock memory. There's no way it would work. All you get are I/O errors, and it just doesn't work at all. So we press spacebar to start. Okay, so what we are given is a very, very playable little version of PacMan. But of course you got to play it with the 4 keys, with the directional keys on the old Alice, and they're kind of very close together, and it's kind of hard enough to play with them. But it is a very playable version of the game, and it's got a couple of surprises in store too. For example, if you finish level 2, you're presented with this little cutscene. And it just keeps going on and on. The configuration of the maze never changes, but it really is a very good little version of PacMan. The only gripe I have with this system is that I don't have a joystick for it, and it would make this really super playable. Okay, so this game here isn't too bad either. It's called Mazy, and you play the part of this guy up here. And what you gotta do is you gotta pick up these knives, and you can use the spacebar to throw them. And these little monsters here, they don't move until they kind of get you in line of sight. But you can throw the knives at them. They kind of follow you around. Funny little guys. So he got me. So yeah, you got to pick up the knives, and you've got to throw them at the monsters in order to kill the little monsters. And then you get out through the door there that's flashing on the bottom right hand side of the screen. And that's what the game is. And it gets harder and harder as you move on. This again is another fun little game, but there is no way that you could have played this with a 4 kilobyte Alice computer. But there you go, there's some of the games that this guy kind of opens up to you and makes available to you. So I think for the very last part of this video, although I haven't quite gotten it to work, to be completely honest with you, I'll show you what problem I'm having, but I would like to show you this guy and the way it can potentially be used with pyDriveWire. So what we'll do is we'll take it down to the other part of the basement where I got my PC, and we will hook it up to it, and I'll show you in theory, because I haven't gotten it to work. I'll show you in theory how it should work, and actually there's no reason why it won't work at some stage, because it seems nobody has a problem with this apart from me. So we'll do that right now, and then we'll wrap up the video. Now, so one of the huge advantages of this MCX128 expansion card is its ability to let us connect an MC-10 or Alice computer to Windows or Linux PC using pyDriveWire. And what that'll do is we can set up a directory full of all kinds of applications and software for the Alice or MC-10, and then we can load it up really, really fast using pyDriveWire. But I'm having problems with that particular system, and I figured the easiest way to show you the problems I'm having with the Alice is to show you it working properly on a Coco 2. So the first thing I need to do is I need to connect my USB to serial cable to my host computer, because it doesn't have an inbuilt serial port. And then I connect my DriveWire cable to that USB to serial cable. Finally, I connect the other end, the 4-pin prong of the DriveWire cable, to my Coco 2, and I power on the Coco 2. Now, I open up the command prompts on my host PC, and I run the pyDriveWire script. But there's two things I want to do. I want to set up the web user interface on port 6800, and also I want to connect using a baud rate 57,600. Now, once all this is set, I can press enter, and it loads up. pop into Google Chrome, that's it, and I tap in localhost :6800 and I have access to my web interface. Now all I need to do is mount a disk image. So here I'll mount Sailor. And when I go over to my Coco 2 and type dir, the contents of that disk are displayed on screen. And then I can load up that game from there. So as you can see, it is communicating with the host PC and it's getting information across that cable into its serial port. Now it should work in somewhat the same way with the Alice. I just plug in the serial cable into the back of the Alice, make sure I have my MCX128 card plugged in and power on. Now the difference is on the host PC, the options I need to set when I'm running pyDriveWire are, well, actually all I need to change is the speed. We're not going to be connecting at 57,600 bits per second anymore. We're going to be connecting at 38,400. When I press enter, everything starts up the way it should. However, instead of mounting a disk and all that kind of stuff to use it with the Alice, what I do is I need to have a folder set up. And see what folder has been set up. I just type MC space get dir and hit enter. So here you can see that I've got the folder set up is the folder I'm in. And I've actually got two C10 files in there. I've got DigDog and I've got PacMan. So heading over to the Alice, when I type dir, it should give me the contents of that directory. However, what I get is an IO error. Now, I'm not sure what the problem is exactly. It could be something to do with the speed, although all the pyDriveWire documentation says use 38,400 bits per second. However, it doesn't seem to be working for me. Or in the worst case scenario, I may well have a problem with the Alice's serial port. I don't know, because I can't test it any other way. But that's pretty much where I am with that. Now, so that's another episode after coming to an end, and I suppose we're kind of ending on a little bit of a downer in that I couldn't get the damn thing to work with pyDriveWire, but these things happen. I suppose it's probably just a simple configuration problem, or if you have any idea what I'm doing wrong, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. So what we were looking at today was Darren Atkinson's MCX128 memory expansion for both the Alice and the MC-10. And I would say if this board interests you, you'd like to get yourself one, I would definitely pop on over to the Zipster Zone to see if Ed Snyder has any of them in stock, rather than spending 11 hours trying to make one of these boards yourself like I did. But if you'd like to try your hand at making up a board like this using perf board and point-to-point soldering and all that kind of stuff, what I thought I'd do, because I filmed the entire 11 hours of me doing that, was put a little video together on it. Now don't worry, it's not going to be 11 hours long, and to be honest, I don't know an awful lot about it. I was never trained in soldering or any of that kind of stuff. So it's only some of the little tips and tricks I kind of picked up between watching things on the internet and actually doing these things myself over the last 4 or 5 years. So I thought I'd put a little video together, just going into gathering information together, seeing the best way to lay out chips and whatever from reading the schematic, and just putting stuff together and little soldering techniques and whatever to get to a working board, hopefully at the end of it. So if that's your bag, in the next couple of months, I should hopefully have a video out about that. Between this and then, I've got plenty coming up. What I'm really looking forward to actually is that Atari 7800 that I got. I got a 7800 cartridge for it, and it's working. So there wasn't a problem with the cartridge port at all. It seems to be working away perfectly. So what I'd love to do is modify that cart so that it can be used as I suppose to swap out ROMs to try out different games for the Atari 7800, because it seems that the technology is a lot different, a lot more complicated than it was for the Atari 2600, and we can't really make a multi-cart that way with it. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. But yeah, there's plenty more on the way. But anyway, enough rambling on. If this video was down your street, if you liked it and you haven't done so already, think of clicking on the old subscribe button. Give us an old thumbs up. Equally, give us a thumbs down if you didn't like it. And if you didn't and you've stayed right till the end, good on you. But other than that, you can leave a comment down in the comments section. And I'll try and answer any comments that are left to me. So guys, thanks very much for watching. We'll talk to you in the next one. And until then, I will be down here waiting in my basement for your return. See you then. Bye-bye.